Well, at the same time as well, let's not forget that all the doctors and nurses that previously told us we had to not protest in public and wear masks and practice social distancing, they're now all saying that it's okay for Black Lives Matter protesters to protest and share all the air in public places. They don't need to wear masks. They don't need to practice social distancing. They're basically saying that everything they previously said was a complete fraud, since protesting is now more important because they support this particular social cause. That's more important than everything they previously said about a disease that they predicted would kill millions. And even further, this is my own commentary, but I'll ask for your opinion on this. Didn't they tell us that COVID-19 disproportionately kills black people? And in some cities, I think 70% of the deaths were African Americans. And isn't it now those very same black people that these mostly white doctors are telling to go out and protest and get infected? I mean, why isn't this raising question marks in the minds of more people than just us?
They are a familiar sight in modern-day landscapes, telecommunication towers that should soon provide the Dutch with internet speeds 100 times faster than current 4G connections. But they have also become a popular target for activists protesting against 5G. Dozens have been set alight in the Netherlands in the past few months. While protests and the COVID-19 pandemic have delayed the introduction of 5G in other European countries, the Netherlands has given the green light.
If you as a country can support all kinds of applications with 5G, then maybe your country is the first where all these applications are used. Maybe they're also developed in your country, and that stimulates economy.
The applications the Netherlands is keen to develop with 5G are self-driving cars, robot arms in hospitals and feeding cattle with drones in agriculture. While the fastest frequency of 3.5 MHz can only be auctioned after 2021, providers hope that 900 MHz, the frequency that's currently being auctioned, can lead to a huge change in these industries. While Parliament has asked for more research into the possible health effects of 5G, the bidding process is now in full swing. Judges have ruled that if risks become apparent, the implementation of 5G should be reconsidered. But with so much money and so many interests at stake, some are wondering if this new technology could be stopped. After losing a court case against the government, the group Stop 5G has appealed against the verdict. They say that the government should wait until the health report has been sent to Parliament.
So it's very remarkable that they don't wait the outcome of the report, because we have to know about the safety of 5G. And it's with like medicines. Medicines are not coming into the market before they are tested on safety. And now it's too unsure, and we should wait the outcome from this health council.
We're going to begin with a dire warning and a dangerous surge of coronavirus infections across the South. The World Health Organization now says the pandemic is far from over and that it may actually be speeding up. Here in the U.S., more than half of all states are seeing increases in cases, overwhelming hospitals, and leading to long lines at testing sites in Florida and Texas. And as we head into the July 4th weekend, the second big holiday of the summer, experts are warning we may be paying a price for how states handled the first one, Memorial Day. About half of all new cases in the U.S. are in California, Texas, Florida, and Arizona, forcing some governors who once touted reopening to order new closures. Tonight, Arizona's governor says he is shutting down bars, nightclubs, and water parks for a month. Beaches and bars in Florida are also shutting down, and New York and New Jersey are rethinking just how fast they want to reopen restaurants. As we come on the air, the virus has killed more than 500,000 people worldwide, with about a quarter of all those deaths right here in the U.S. There is a lot of news to get to tonight. And of course, our team of correspondents is standing by to cover it all. CBS's Manuel Bajorquez is going to lead off our coverage tonight from Miami Beach. Manny.
Well, Major, over the weekend, Florida reported a one-day record for new COVID-19 cases, more than 9,500. Today, the reported number was down significantly to about 5,200. Still, it's a large enough increase that 4 counties have decided they will shut down their beaches over the 4th of July weekend. Some beachgoers don't see how cutting off access over the weekend will help.
I don't have a problem with the beaches being open because I don't think that's what's causing the problem.
People 35 and under now account for nearly 40% of cases statewide. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez.
What do you think went wrong here?
Well, what went wrong without a doubt was the minute we started opening, people started socializing as if the coronavirus didn't exist.
Miami now requires face coverings in public and announced tougher penalties on businesses not in compliance. New Jersey has decided to postpone allowing indoor dining given the spikes in other states. New York City may hold off too. With cases mounting in California, Governor Gavin Newsom dialed back reopenings. 8 counties, including Los Angeles, have now closed bars. Dr. Ashish Jha is director of the Harvard Global Health Institute.
I'm very concerned about large parts of our country, especially Arizona, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, but other states as well, where we're seeing really pretty substantial increases in cases.
He also says declining death rates likely will rise again.
Typically, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks from an infection till somebody gets sick enough to die from the disease.
Georgia reported a record daily number of new cases Sunday, and at least 19 states have more patients hospitalized for COVID-19 than 2 weeks ago. In West Virginia, a Planet Fitness gym temporarily closed after a member tested positive. More than 200 people who may have been exposed were asked to quarantine. And in Tennessee, country singer Chase Rice is facing backlash after playing a concert where social distancing was not enforced. You won't hear the music of Broadway, however. Shows will remain shuttered through the end of the year. Manuel Bojorquez, CBS News, Miami.
President Trump says that he's seen evidence that the coronavirus originated at a lab in Wuhan, China, but he cannot make that evidence public. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence says that they are investigating that theory. So earlier today, we spoke to Ben Tracy about what the president had to say about that investigation, as well as other comments he made about the coronavirus.
Well, the president basically blames China and the World Health Organization for not giving out enough information early on about the spread of the coronavirus. But this is different from what the president did say early on. Back in January, back in February, he was praising China. He was saying that they're being transparent and that President Xi was doing a good job handling this virus. And yesterday here at the White House, the president basically intimated that he was praising China because he was trying to get the trade deal done at the time.
And here's a new 5G chipset right here with Qualcomm, the X55. So who are you?
I am Nitin Zeman, product marketing for 5G modems at Qualcomm.
And this is a new launch?
This is our latest modem we announced last week. What I'm holding here is the world's most advanced modem that integrates 5G all the way back to 2G in a single chip.
So this is the most advanced 5G chipset in the world?
Yes.
And how's it different from the X50?
This integrates 5G all the way back to 2G, whereas X50 was a 5G modem. This is built on the 7-nanometer process, so it's much smaller and more power efficient than the X50, which was
X50 is 10?
10 nanometers, correct.
And there's also something about the first generation 5G, the second generation 5G. What is it called?
There's no second generation 5G, but we have second generation solutions for 5G.
But what is that?
It's basically our next lineup of modems for 5G. That's what we're calling this.
But does this support something that the X50 doesn't have, right? Other than just 2G. There's a new implementation of the 5G that's more future-proof, right?
There are other modes that it supports in addition to what X50 did. We introduced support for FDD, for example, and 5G standalone mode, which is key for some markets around the world. So this basically supports, you can call it any flavor of 5G under the sun is supported here.
What is this FDD? Is it similar to what was in 4G?
Similar concept. So most operators have a spectrum either in TDD or FDD. The FDD footprint around the world is for LTE was much bigger than TDD. With 5G, there are operators who've been waiting for FDD support so they can launch 5G services on their networks. But with full support for TDD and FDD for 5G and 4G, it gives maximum flexibility for operators to launch 5G services.
So X55 is doing FDD, which is most popular on 4G. Is it also going to be more put around 5G or nobody knows yet?
It depends. So the other thing we've enabled with the X55 is something called 5G, 4G spectrum sharing. What that means is operators can use existing spectrum that they have, which happens to be mostly FTD, and they can use the same spectrum to deploy 5G.
So all the guys that are doing FDD, which is all of Europe and most of China, or a lot of China and Asia.
There's very little China on FTD, but most of the world uses FTD extensively.
Most of the world. And how about T-Mobile? Which one is that? AT&T and T-Mobile, they have the GSM. The other ones are doing the CDMA. Is that something to do with that? Verizon and Sprint is different. Is that something to do?
Yeah, so AT&T and Verizon will have both spectrum. Most operators have both in the US, but T-Mobile specifically for 5G, they were expecting to launch on FTD. So this solution helps them get there too.
This solution is crucial.
Yes.
And you haven't announced any SoC that has a modem built in, right?
We did. Yesterday we announced an integrated SoC with 5G modem support.
So it's not the 855?
We haven't announced which product it is. It's not the 855. It's a separate SoC.
And you announced it's 7 nanometers, I guess?
We do not disclose that.
So it's just called all-in-one SoC 5G solution?
At this point, yes. So the extent of the announcement was that we have an integrated solution, and Samsung was also partnered with us, and they came up on stage and mentioned that they will launch a device with that integrated SoC sometime soon.
Is this going to take a little while? There's 5G coming now. You have a whole bunch of partners. They're all on X50 right now.
Yes.
And this one is going to take a little bit longer, right? How soon is this one coming?
Slightly longer, but not that too long. It's already sampling to customers, and we're expecting commercial device launches in the second half of this year. So it's coming fast.
It's coming fast. So maybe no device before the end of the year, maybe, right? Like like finalized mass production devices potentially.
No, definitely devices before the end of the year.
Before the end of the year.
Correct.
Maybe for Christmas.
I think it should be well before Christmas because of the areas I talked about, FTD support and standalone support that enables operators in different markets to come up with devices, and we should see that within 2019.
So on the stage, I think his name is Cristiano Amon,
Yes.
right? President?
Yes.
And he said that Qualcomm did a huge work with all the partners, but to get it 1 year sooner.
Yes.
And so can you explain a little bit the challenge of doing that?
Did you want this?
So
the challenge getting there?
Yeah, so how did you get sooner than, how did you do it 1 year faster? Without doing FDD, what's it called? TFF?
Right, yeah, we didn't have to rely on one particular mode to roll out 5G. A lot of the leading operators were looking at TDD and millimeter wave, because that's where we focused on launching initially. And the way we pushed it, accelerated this, is to push standard bodies to complete the standards back in, I believe, 2018. And then we worked with all operators around the world and all major operators as well as infrastructure vendors to make sure 5G is available and implemented on their systems ahead of time before what they were planning previously.
And what is the power consumption difference between a separate modem and a built-in SoC? Is there any numbers on that?
I don't have any numbers for that.
So the question is, how can 5G be evolved? Which issues will exist that 5G cannot solve by just evolving the technology, and what is needed beyond 5G? And the first question is, what are the 6G applications? What are we going to use it for? And this is way too early to answer. We don't even know what the 5G applications are yet. And here's an example of that. 3G was introduced in 1998. And 6 years later, in 2004, OECD was writing their believed 3G applications. It contains video calling, mobile e-commerce, location-based services, games and sports events, broadband internet, broadband video services. And this was in 2004. I would say that video calling took off in 2010 with FaceTime. And iPhone 3G started in 2008. That was when people was really using the internet in their phones. So that was 10 years or more after 3G. So whatever application were claimed to be 3G application turned out to be used 10 years later in 4G, for example. So my point is that all the papers that contain 60 applications are just speculations. Probably the 60 applications are going to be what we said was 5G applications, to some extent at least. So what we should focus on now is not what we're going to use 60 for, but which new technology component can improve things a lot. So here are some performance metrics that you can find in 60 flagships white paper from last year. So having higher peak data rate, lower radio latency, better battery life, more density in terms of number of devices per square meter or even cubic meter, and more traffic per square kilometer, and having extreme ultra reliable systems, more energy efficiency and better positioning. All these things can be done by combining a more advanced technology in terms of hardware with better signal processing. We cannot, of course, do all of these things at the same time. We cannot build a system that is able to do all these extreme things. So we need to build a technology that can adapt itself depending on the use cases and move between different cases here. And we need to look now for really radical solutions. If we in theory can demonstrate a 10% gain, maybe those gains will disappear when we move to a practical setup. So we need to look for 10 times or 100 times improvements in order to reach something real in reality, something that is worth investing in. And it's way too early to talk about applications. So focus on one or multiple of these different metrics and see what can we do ideally to improve that metric. And then what it's going to be used for is something we need to figure out later. So what is next? Massive MIMO appeared in 2010. Thomas Mercetta's paper, Non-Cooperative Cellular Wireless with Unlimited Number of Base Station Antennas, was considered science fiction. You can't have an infinite number of antennas in a finite-sized world. But then it turns out that 10 years later, it's a commercial reality. And in the same way, we need to think about which science fictions-like technologies for communication applications can we think about in 2020, and which one will be reality in 2029. So here are 3 of my ideas about that. One is cell-free networks, where instead of having a world where you divide the world into cells and you are served by the base station in that cell, you are removing the cell boundaries and you have a lot of antennas and you let the user be served by a subset of those ones, the ideal selection of them, so that you are taking away the interference between different cells. Then we have the concept of intelligent reflecting surfaces, which are large MIMO-like surfaces where the signal that is incident on it is going to be reflected towards a particular user in the form of a beam. And this can be an almost passive type of surface. And finally, we have what I call extremely large aperture arrays, which are like massive MIMO, but very, very much larger. So more in line with what people have been talking about in the literature. And then we need to figure out new ways of deploying it, because if you only can fit small arrays on the rooftops, maybe we can put it on the face of a building or something like that. And then you can get extremely good resolution how you focus signals in space. So instead of sending a beam, you might be able to focus the signal in just a small ball around where the receiver is located. So these are 3 different future use cases that I believe a lot in. If you want to learn more, I recommend you to read our paper Massive MIMO is Reality, What is Next? 5 Promising Research Directions for Antenna Arrays.
The city of Lund in southern Sweden dates back to medieval times. Over the centuries, it's witnessed plenty of change, but now there's a whole new sort of evolution going on. I'm here to meet some of the thousands of people in the country who are adapting their own bodies, who are inserting microchips under their skin. It means they may never have to carry a house key, train ticket, or bank card ever again. This is a microchipping party. Hannah's getting an electronic chip implanted into her hand. She believes one day we'll all be chipped like her.
So congratulations, Hannah.
Thank you.
You've been chipped?
Yes, I have.
How does it feel?
It feels good. I'm excited to see what I'll be able to do now.
Can I touch it?
Yeah, you can feel it there. I feel like this is the future. the next big thing that's going to happen. Happy Cyborg birthday.
Happy Cyborg birthday to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
But is this sci-fi fantasy or practicality? I want to know why anyone would want to do this. For this teenager, microchips, it seems, are in her DNA.
Felicia is my daughter and I'm the father.
So you're a microchip family?
We will become one now today.
Magnus and his daughter Felicia have come here together tonight because they believe this is the future.
You're going to have an upgraded dad.
Yeah.
As they say, it was good being a human, but being a cyborg is better. Didn't feel a thing.
It's a quick, simple procedure with potentially huge significance.
So you're officially part machine. How does it feel?
This is awesome. How cool is that? Good job.
Do you think in a few years' time, in a decade perhaps, we'll all have things like this?
Yes, of course. I really do think.
For around £130, anyone can get a tiny microchip like this inserted just beneath the skin in their hands. I can't help feeling a bit squeamish about it, but maybe I'm just behind the times.
It's the morning after, and I'm about to catch up with Felicia and her dad Magnus as they get to grips with their new existence.
So when you woke up this morning, was it the first thing that came to your mind? How did you feel?
I felt a little bit strange because now I'm a cyborg and it feels pretty cool.
The chips in their hands use near-field communication, the same technology that allows you to pay with a contactless credit card. They can be read by a device like a smartphone.
So here I've stored my business card on my phone with my details, phone number, email address, other stuff, blood group even.
So what's the benefit of that?
When I get customers or suppliers at work, they ask for my business card and I say, scan me.
Aren't there risks involved in that as well? Couldn't somebody pass you by and take all that
Scan me.
information?
Yes, it is in theory possible, but you have to be really, really close. But the main thing I think is that I choose myself what I want to store on this chip.
The people I've met so far don't seem to have any concerns about blurring the lines between man and machine. Hannes has made it his mission to convince more of us to get microchipped. He's what's known as a biohacker, someone who wants to improve their body with technology.
What's wrong with just having contactless payment cards? We've all got phones, we've all got a set of keys. What's the point?
The point is to reduce the hassle of exactly these things.
Isn't that just the ultimate laziness?
No, it's convenience. And convenience is a pretty powerful force. I mean, in the morning, every morning, when you stand there going out your front door, you check your purse or your pockets. Okay, do I have my wallet, my charger, my keys, my phone, all my stuff? What if you could reduce that by half? It would declutter your life.
Hannes has helped develop several microchips. He wants us all to hack our biology. Microchipping is, he says, just the start.
I want us humans to open up and improve our sensory universe, our cognitive functions, and improve all different dimensions of being human. And there is so much we can do.
You want to make us bionic?
Indeed. I want to merge humans with technology, and I think it will be awesome.
I want to understand why it's people in Sweden who are enthusiastically embracing this idea, when many others might be sceptical. This is a nation of early adopters. Sweden's set to become the world's first cashless society, and the economy here is driven by digital innovation. This national rail company has taken microchipping on board, with 2,500 passengers signing up to use their chip instead of a paper ticket. I've come to the capital, Stockholm, the epicenter of this tech revolution. At this shared office, hundreds of the workers have been microchipped. so no need for a security pass to get in. Per has had his chip for 3 years.
So I take my chip and open the door.
It means he can buy a drink without cash or a card. But for him, it's about much more than practicality.
Do you enjoy being one of the first, being a pioneer of this technology?
Absolutely. A whole bunch of questions come up. Like, is this ethical? Do we want to have that? Or will we be sort of a nation of cyborgs in the future, and what will happen? So a lot of sort of really interesting discussions come out from, talking about the chip.
It triggers an ethical debate.
Yes.
For critics, the biggest future concern is over data protection. As the amount and type of information we store on microchips becomes more advanced, so do the security risks. Ben Liberton, a British scientist working in Sweden, wants to know who will have access to the data stored inside and what they could do with it.
So I have the information in my chip now. That's basically just me. If I don't use it for anything, then no one can really get any data on me. But then if I start to use it at work, then work knows when I've interacted with something at work. If I then go to the canteen people know exactly what I've interacted with there. So the wider spread it becomes and the more that we can interact with different things, then our data is being kind of shared and incorporated in lots of different places. The nightmare situation in that case would then be that someone else has access to my health data, and that one day I get a letter through the door that's like an increase in my health insurance premium before I know that there's any problem with my own health. So I think we have to be cautious now in the very early stages to make sure that we're actually controlling how the information is being shared.
For now, it seems to me, what the chips can actually do is fairly limited. But the people I've spoken to are convinced that this technology will, one day, change the way we live. That in the future, we will all be chipped. And they are leading the way.
Well, at the same time as well, let's not forget that all the doctors and nurses that previously told us we had to not protest in public and wear masks and practice social distancing, they're now all saying that it's okay for Black Lives Matter protesters to protest and share all the air in public places. They don't need to wear masks. They don't need to practice social distancing. They're basically saying that everything they previously said was a complete fraud, since protesting is now more important because they support this particular social cause. That's more important than everything they previously said about a disease that they predicted would kill millions. And even further, this is my own commentary, but I'll ask for your opinion on this. Didn't they tell us that COVID-19 disproportionately kills black people? And in some cities, I think 70% of the deaths were African Americans. And isn't it now those very same black people that these mostly white doctors are telling to go out and protest and get infected? I mean, why isn't this raising question marks in the minds of more people than just us?